Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. Thursday marked the fourth day of the inquest into Aisha Hudson's death in Winnipeg. Testifying were Constables Sylvester and Carnegie as witnesses. Julia Ross attended.
Constable Pradnuk's partner, Constable Serge Sylvester, testified today, along with K-9 officer Constable Ian Carnegie. Pradnuk testified yesterday that he was unable to tell the effectiveness of the two shots fired at Aisha Hudson, and that the second shot was fired after Hudson's vehicle began to move forward after reversing. Constable Carnegie says he filed a use of force report as he used an empty-handed control to pull Miss Hudson out of the vehicle to arrest her. He says that she was not responding to commands to exit, resulting in her being pulled out of the vehicle. Carnegie testified that he was not aware that Hudson had been shot, and when he noticed an injury to her nose, he believed it was from the collision between her vehicle and the pickup truck that ended the pursuit. Carnegie says he called an ambulance and was told after arresting Hudson by Constable Pradnuk that shots had been fired. Pradnuk began first aid after identifying the wound and began CPR when Hudson became unresponsive. Constable Sylvester testified that he had been pulling on a door handle on the driver's side of Hudson's vehicle when she began to reverse towards him, resulting in Pradnuk's initial shot. Carnegie says that no one voiced over the radio to abort the pursuit. Both Carnegie and Sylvester testified that there is no training that could be done to further prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
An Indigenous business group is calling on the Ontario government to reconsider legislation, which is designed to strengthen the provincial economy and support manufacturing within the province. The First Nations Association says the act leaves out First Nations owned and Northern Ontario-based businesses. Mike McDonald has more.
The Anishinaabe Business Professional Association sent a letter last month to Ontario Minister of Public and Business Services Delivery and Procurement Stephen Crawford. It states the group's strategic review of the Buy Ontario Act found its definition of an Ontario business favors southern, urban, and non-Indigenous entities. Jason Razovich is the association's president.
Part of it are the issues around the definition of an Ontario business. We're seeing that this requires 250 employees for it to be headquartered with a Southern Ontario focus. Shows that it favors factories that may be based in Toronto, and it doesn't reflect the realities of the North, like Thunder Bay, and the small medium enterprises such as Indigenous businesses.
Among the recommendations made by the association is a 5% Indigenous procurement target and an updating of the definition of an Ontario business to recognize First Nations and Métis enterprises. Landon Jourdain, a senior business consultant with Fort William First Nation-based Wawano Consultancy, says the act represents a step in the wrong direction on the path to reconciliation.
Canada as a whole and the provinces have been touting reconciliation for years now, but then go and pass legislation where they openly say they didn't consider First Nations communities or the North as a whole. And I feel like Northern Ontario tends to get marginalized consistently by Southern Ontario because, we're out of sight, out of mind, I suppose.
Razovich adds leaving out the Indigenous business community ignores a major economic driver in the North.
One of the studies that we released last January showcased that Indigenous businesses and the Indigenous spend in the city of Thunder Bay, for example, contributes $1.5 billion to the region, and it provides a direct and indirect opportunity and is a main driver of our economy here in the city.
Since issuing its letter to the province, the association has received the support of the Anishinaabe Nation in its call for changes to the Buy Ontario Act. Razovich hopes this support will get the attention of Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
Now to British Columbia, where a recent court judgment to keep fish farms from getting licenses on the Discovery Islands is being welcomed by those that say they are dangerous for wild salmon. Tina House has more.
I'm here to check on the juvenile fish that are migrating to sea this year. For 20 years we've seen massive sea lice outbreaks in this area because of the salmon farms.
Marine biologist Alexandra Morton has dedicated her life to saving wild salmon. She has worked extensively alongside many Indigenous communities in BC to help save the wild salmon population from what she says is a direct link from salmon farms. In 2023, then Federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, Joyce Murray, did not renew aquaculture licenses to Maui, a Norwegian fish farm company. They appealed, and on January the 29th, 2026, the Federal Court of Appeal dismissed the appeal from Maui from operating near the Discovery Islands, located just off the coast of southern Vancouver Island.
It's fantastic that the court said that the minister can use science that's outside of DFO. And all of us are watching these wild salmon rebound wherever the farms have been removed. And so this just means that the trend of increasing salmon in British Columbia has a chance to continue in the Fraser. And we're hoping that, we'll get to see salmon farms removed from other parts of the coast.
Morton says that in 2020, she went to the Discovery Islands to look at the health of juvenile wild salmon, and the samples she collected showed extensive sea lice.
The danger is pathogens. The farms are breaking all the natural laws, and so sea lice and viruses and bacteria are breeding in these farms. And there's been a lot of suppression around this science that's showing impact, but there's a lot of brave scientists at Canadian universities and within DFO, Pacific Salmon Foundation, that are showing that the impact of these farms is significant.
Chief Bob Chamberlain is the chair of the Wild Salmon Alliance. He is very happy with the court's decision, but urges the federal government to do even more.
There has been a long-standing call for an independent science panel to do this kind of work. And it's time that we do that, and that we see the Prime Minister make a comment and come forward and explain to Canadians that he's going to do the right thing for wild salmon in British Columbia.
We reached out to Maui for comment, but did not hear back by the time this story went to air. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
An Ontario woman facing a $500,000 lawsuit over allegations she accused a mother and her 3 daughters of being pretendians is now responding in court. Our reporter Sarah Connors, who first broke the story, has the latest.
A woman in Ontario being sued for accusing a mother and her 3 daughters of being pretendians has filed a statement of defense denying the claims made against her. Michelle Christine Cameron, who goes by the name Crystal Mariah Semeganis, filed the statement of defense in the Supreme Court of Yukon on January 29th. The filing denies Semeganis published any defamatory comments about the women and argues that even if she did, they were true and made in the public interest. Semeganis describes herself as an activist against pretendians, a pejorative term used to describe someone falsely claiming Indigenous heritage. She's also the leader of the Ghost Warrior Society, which aims to expose what it considers to be false claims of Indigenous ancestry. Louise Derrick and her 3 daughters sued Semeganis last summer. The statement of claim accuses Semeganis of engaging in a relentless and libelous campaign against the women, particularly Derrick's daughter, Amanda Buffalo. It alleges Semeganis accused the women of falsely claiming Indigenous heritage for personal and professional gain and is seeking $500,000 in damages. The statement of defense asked for the lawsuit to be dismissed. Neither the statement of claim or defense have been tested in court. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
APTN Investigates is back tonight. We've got a preview for you after the break. Welcome back. The Northwest Territories is turning up the heat on renewable energy sources in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lower utility bills. Here's Charlotte Moore-Jacobs with more.
These are the heavyweights of renewable heat, and here are the Northerners looking to operate them.
Or is it you have to get in there really?
They're part of a training course intended for operators and facility managers with experience in commercial systems, who are looking to extend their knowledge on how to safely and efficiently run heating plants powered by biomass boilers. Like Sheldon Farsi from Digagotene, Fort Providence.
There's quite a bit of maintenance that goes into these systems and what really has to be looked at. And especially in these remote communities that really need it. We've been getting a lot of people from the south, and it'd be good to get local technicians trained.
The training is part of a 3-day Arctic Bioenergy Summit in Yellowknife, hosted by Arctic Energy Alliance and Wood Pellet Association of Canada.
Further north, there's less familiarity with wood as a fuel source and wood as a heat source.
Industry leaders say to grow the sector, focus needs to shift on upfront capital costs of systems to long-term community benefits. Going as far as calling the NWT the Saudi Arabia of forests, with enough fuel to responsibly run chip boilers to heat every home and business. Executive Director of the Arctic Energy Alliance, Mark Hike, says the North has been working with biomass for space heating and wood pellets for the last 2 decades, and there's extraordinary potential for climate mitigation.
We're facing increasing threats from wildfires, and we're trying to build up community resilience. Fire smarting around our communities is a really important piece of that, but it's also something that will harvest a fuel that we can use to actually produce energy with.
Why is it important to have a regular schedule for cleaning your boiler tubes?
Trainer David Dubois says for bioenergy to be viable, building capacity is essential.
They're used to operating an oil boiler or they're used to operating a wood stove. There's a layer of automation that these have in order to make them operate efficiently and effectively. Oftentimes, the use of these automated systems can be a little bit challenging to people that aren't comfortable using a control panel and everything like that. So we do a lot of work to ensure that it's very user-friendly, no different than using a smartphone.
Back in the classroom, Lyndon Antoine of Hay River can't help but thinking of communities heating with imported and pricey diesel and heating oil. He sees biomass as a homegrown answer to high energy costs and investment in local economy.
To save money for sure, and to use that money elsewhere, right, as possible. So, for funding, and you can make use of it for the youth or the seniors, or,
Arctic Energy Alliance says based on demand, they hope to offer routine training starting later this year. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Reporter Kenneth Jackson sets out to expose how wartime industrial and government decisions poisoned land and water in the village of Nobel, Ontario. It's another chapter of Canada's toxic legacy in the heart of the Anishinaabe territory as contamination remains today. Here's a preview.
When you're dealing with tens of millions of pounds of explosives and chemicals, it has to go somewhere.
They built explosives here. They needed components for explosives. The local legend is that munitions were actually dumped there when they closed the plant and walked away.
It's now affectionately known as Gun Cotton Creek.
The stakes are high. The stakes are really high.
My grandfather, Alfred, raised the kids at Nobel. They had 12 kids. And out of the 12 kids, 5 of them suffered serious forms of cancer, from stomach to brain cancers, thyroid cancers.
What do you think's stuck in the ground there?
I think persistent contaminants that never go away.
I think to work there for like 30, 40 years, breathing the ethylene glycol, the nitrate fumes, was not good.
Clean up the land, return it to the First Nations. We want to be part of the direction that fixes what our governments have done.
The British Columbia government's pilot program to decriminalize small amounts of drugs has come to an end. APTN's Tina House takes a closer look at what's happening as the war on drugs rages on. And a warning, some of the images in this report may be disturbing.
Vancouver, BC, voted one of the top places in the world to live. But right in the city are 10 square blocks that make up Vancouver's downtown east side. Although the toxic drug crisis is not limited to just the downtown east side, there isn't anywhere else where the sad reality of drug addiction is more open. With hundreds of people struggling on the streets to survive, many here are also heavily addicted. James Harry is a former drug addict. 7 years ago, He, alongside his wife Janet, decided to get clean and change their lives for good. He founded a nonprofit called the All Nations Outreach that helps others get sober. We drove through the neighborhood that once represented so much pain and loss for him to talk about his experience.
Has it gotten any better?
No, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. With what's in these drugs today, that they're, that it was around that time is, it was crack and heroin and alcohol. But now after that, the ports are shut down, and the gangs and dealers have to get creative, and they and now this fentanyl is introduced. It's already there, but it is basically the main drug now. You drive by here, you walk by here, you see everybody hunched over in 3 different directions, or face down into a dirty, bacteria-filled alley, right?
In January of 2023, what was hailed as a lifeline to help save lives, the BC and federal government approved a 3-year program that would make it legal to carry 2.5 grams of drugs.
As we all know, there is no recovery for someone who is dead. Last May, I announced that our government had approved an exemption request from the province of British Columbia so that adults 18 years and over in the province found in the personal possession of up to 2.5 grams of certain illegal drugs for personal use would not be arrested, criminally charged, or have their drugs seized.
Now, 3 years later, that pilot program has come to an end, with many critics saying it didn't work, including James Harry.
I give them credit for trying. They tried, but it is right. And I mentioned it before. All we're doing is giving these dealers a free pass and confidence to walk around with drugs in their pocket and not worry about getting pinched, right?
In 2016, the opioid epidemic exploded, and here in British Columbia, 16,000 people lost their lives to toxic drugs. Since then, the BC government has tried everything to help the situation. We sat down with BC Health Minister Josie Osborne to talk about the provincial government's plans on what they're doing next on the war on drugs.
Not one person is not touched by this crisis, and that's why we must continue to take an all-hands-on-deck approach, using all the tools and options that we have to build out a complete and comprehensive system of care that addresses everything from social determinants of health that impact reasons why people struggle with mental health and substance use, early interventions, prevention, treatment and recovery, and supporting people through recovery with aftercare and what they need, because for so many people this is a lifelong journey.
Here on Vancouver's downtown east side, undoubtedly ground zero, many are wondering what can be done next to help those that are suffering with addiction. We met Holly Russell, who grew up in West Vancouver. She's been living on the streets for over 15 years and addicted to drugs. She has overdosed 4 times. Russell says the government has to do more to help others like her.
The safer supply, they should still be doing it. It helped a lot of people.
Grand Chief Stuart Phillips says the BC government needs to go back to the 4-pillar approach of harm reduction, prevention, treatment, and enforcement.
We were on a track that I thought was progressive in terms of harm reduction and decriminalizing the possession and use of small amounts of drugs that addicts require on a daily basis. But because of the extremism, the right-wing extremism, through political parties like the BC Conservative Party, now the province has abandoned that and has recriminalized possession and public use of drugs.
But the crisis hits closer to home for him. 7 years ago, his oldest son, Kenny, who was sober for a long time, decided to use one more time, not knowing that he took a fatal dose of carfentanil. He died instantly.
And he was gone before he hit the floor. So I have other members. One of my nieces was murdered in a drug war in the Okanagan. One of my nephews overdosed. So it's taking a huge number of our family members. And I would like to remind people that this is not simply an issue for governments or for policing. We all carry a responsibility to do what we can to support the people that carry an addiction.
The BC government says they are now focused on building more treatment centres to try and stop this crisis from taking more lives. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The Arctic Winter Games are just weeks away, but one of the service providers is pulling out. Details on that after the break. Welcome back. The Arctic Winter Games will be held in Whitehorse next month, and with that comes feeding thousands of athletes and providing much needed venue space. But with just weeks left, one of the game's service providers says it had to pull out. Sarah Connors tells us why.
Circumpolar North's biggest sporting event is heading to Whitehorse next month, where approximately 2,000 young athletes will be competing. Yukon University's Iamdegut campus was contracted to feed athletes and provide venue space for things like the game's medical station and command center. But with less than 40 days to go, the university has withdrawn from providing services.
We basically got to a point where time was running out.
The Arctic Winter Games Host Society says it was a joint decision. That's because more than 400 university employees may be going on strike as early as March 2nd, just 1 week before the games start. A resolution concerning wage disputes has yet to be reached.
We just couldn't risk it anymore to be part of that and to risk having to manage these games and the access to campus through a labor dispute.
It was really, really hard.
The university's interim president says it's disappointed it had to pull out, but feels it was the right thing to do.
We know that we've lost an incredible opportunity to show the children of the North this beautiful facility and all the things that we have in place here, and have lost an opportunity to recruit future students.
The host society says the focus now is on finalizing Plan B, and fast. Services have been moved off campus and will be split across multiple venues. Its president is confident they can get the job done in time for the games.
So make no mistake, this is going to be a lot of work, but we have this exemplary staff, and the volunteers we have in the community is behind us on this. We know we've had a lot of support in the last few days.
The Arctic Winter Games Host Society says it will be announcing its contingency plan in the next couple of days. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Looking forward to the games. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Saturday. You can find more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Stick around, and all new APTN Investigates is up next. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.